one of the things that people say is great about Emacs is org mode, which is a really powerful mode for note-taking, document structuring, as well as a bunch of other things as well. But what if I said that there was a way to replicate this behavior inside of Vim? And this plugin has been a work in progress for a very, very long time and is nowhere near complete, but it still has a lot of features. And this plugin is called Vim Org Mode. Now, there are a couple of different plugins that try to do this, but the one we're going to be looking at today is Vim Org Mode. So let's actually go and have a look at how this works. So to actually open up an org file, what we have to do is name the file anything.org. So it could be text.org, test.org, notes.org, anything.org. Now, I don't know if it works the same way in Emacs, that you have to name the file in this specific way, but the way it works inside of Vim is by naming it like this. Now, if your plan is to just use this for note-taking, it's going to work in a fairly similar fashion to something like VimWiki. Now, obviously, VimWiki is going to be a much more complete experience, but if you want an org mode-like experience inside of Vim, this is basically as close as you're going to get. So let's actually go and test this out and see what it can do. Now, obviously, this is a blank file, so there's going to be nothing in it, but let's add some headings to it. So a single level heading is done with a single asterisk, a double level heading is done with 2 asterisks, and then a triple level heading is done with 3 asterisks. Now, depending on your theme, it may go and highlight all of the asterisks, it may not. Mine doesn't seem to do so, but it is actually treating them as the correct level. So if I go and leave insert mode now, as you can see, it went and actually closed those folds. So one of the big things about working with org mode is it heavily uses folds to really compress the size of the document. So if you haven't used folds before in Vim, we can go and open this up with ZO for open. So ZO, that opens that up. ZC, we'll go and close it. So ZO, ZC. I'll go and open up screen key just so it's a bit easier for you guys to see. So we'll open that back up and let's actually add another heading at the same level as this one here. So obviously we can just write out the extra asterisks we need and go and create a new heading like that. But there might be an easier way to do this. So what we can do instead is we actually have 2 key bindings we can work with. We can do \hn, and that will create a new heading below at the same level, or we can do \h capital N, and that will create a new heading above. Now, there is another one, but this one, I don't know how it works, and it seems to break the document fairly frequently. So \hh. As you can see, that deleted everything. It's supposed to go and actually create a new heading below, but it seems to just delete the entire document. So I wouldn't recommend touching that one. Feel free to use HN and H capital N though. So another thing that is useful about org mode is being able to really easily insert dates. So dates aren't actually being used properly in this, but I'll get a bit more into that a bit later. For now, let's actually go and insert a new date. So if I do local leader SA, that will then prompt us to enter a date. Now, by default, it's going to try to insert whatever today's date is, but we can actually go and modify that. So let's just say we want to set it to like 2019-07-09 and leave the day entry open. I think it's going to try to autofill that day for us. As you can see, it then goes and works out whatever that day was. So if instead we wanted to go and use today's date, we can just do \SA or local leader SA and then just press enter and use whatever it's going to try to autofill for us. So in this case, that is 2020-08-10 and that is a Monday. So let's just get rid of these dates because we don't actually need them. So those dates were something called an active date. So the way that we go and insert an inactive date is by doing \SI. So I for inactive, A for active. So as with the one before, we can just press enter and insert today's date, or we can actually go and modify this. So I'm just going to press enter now, and as you see, this has gone and inserted an inactive date. Now, if you actually have the Vim calendar plugin, you can do local leader PA and local leader PI to actually go and insert dates from your calendar. Now, I haven't actually got that plugin installed, so I can't actually do that. And you can also modify a date with Control A and Control X if you have the speed dating plugin, but I don't have that one installed either. So let's say that you have your headings and then you realize that something is at the wrong level. So let's say that this heading down here at the 3rd level, we actually wanted this to be at the 2nd level. Now, obviously, we can just go and modify this, but that's not potentially the easiest way to do it. So what we can do instead is we can actually go and promote this heading by doing left angle bracket, and that will then go and promote it to the same level as the one above it. Or we can go and demote it by doing right angle bracket. Now, on some parts of the document, this might behave really weirdly. So for level 1 headings, I've noticed that sometimes weird things might happen. So if I go and demote this one, as you can see, it goes and closes all of the folds for some reason. I don't know why it does that. It does actually go and work, but for some reason it messed with my folds. Now we can also go and promote this, and this does another weird thing as well. So if we promote this, left angle bracket, it went and copied a part of the document for some reason. I don't know why it does that with level 1 headings. It might be a problem with the way the tree is structured, but I have noticed that it does occasionally do weird things like that. Now, we can also go and promote everything inside of a tree. So if I do right angle bracket AR, that demotes everything. If I do left angle bracket AR, that promotes everything. So left angle bracket AR, that will then bring it up to the same level as these headings that are at heading level 1, and its child is going to be at heading level 2. So instead of using ZO and ZC, we can also go and cycle through the visibility levels of the folds as well. So if I just press tab right now, what it's going to do is go and hide everything that is a child of this bit right here. So it's going to hide this and it's going to hide this. Okay. So if I press tab again, what it's going to show is we have a fold that was hidden inside of this. And if I press it now, as you can see, this goes and shows everything. And obviously, we can also go in the opposite direction by doing Shift Tab. So Shift Tab will show us we have one thing hidden in this. And if I Shift Tab again, what that does is goes and hides everything. Okay, so let's say you have a really big document with a bunch of related sections in it. Now, obviously, you could go and manually search for each of these different headings yourself, but for some things, that might be a little bit annoying. Obviously, if they aren't the exact same text like I have right now, it will be a little bit harder than it otherwise would be. So let's say that you instead wanted to add some sort of method to easily jump to that heading. Well, we can do that with something called a tag. So if I do \st, what that does is lets us add a tag to a heading. So let's add the tag, I don't know, doc. So off to the right here, as you can see, there is this little thing off to the side. So let's actually scroll down the document and do \ft and then search for the tag doc. Now what that's going to do is let us cycle between every single heading that has been tagged with the tag doc. So let's go and add that to a second one. So this one right here, so \st and \st and add the tag doc. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. And let's do \ft now. And what that's going to let us do is jump directly to the headings that have been tagged in that way. So this is just an easier way to move around the document than having to obviously, manually search for everything, because sometimes you might actually not know exactly what that heading was. Now, you could always do another thing like add in your own sort of tagging system where you have like dash, this is doc, and then like dash, this is doc as well. But this is a way that's built into org mode that you could actually use instead. Now, this wouldn't be a very good system for taking notes if it didn't have a way to do lists. So if we do dash and then put square brackets and put a space, then that is basically going to be a checkbox list. We can do a plain list by just not including the checkbox. We can also do it with a plus. So we can do just the list there, or we can do plus with the checkbox, and that will work like that. Now, in the documentation, it also says that we can do a list like this, but that doesn't work because this is going to be a heading. There's no way to distinguish this and this, so I don't know why it shows that this is a list. It's not. I don't know why it's included in the docs. It is just a heading to do it like this. Now, we can also do numbered lists, so these are going to just be unordered lists, but we can do a numbered list by doing 1 dot and then put square brackets for a checkbox list. Or we can do 1 dot without the checkbox and just have a numbered list. Now, it also shows that we can do 1 without the dot, but that obviously doesn't work because there's no way to distinguish this from regular text, so I don't know why that is listed either. So if you want to change the status of a text box, that can just be done with local leader CC. Now, sometimes when you lose focus of the document, it stops working for some reason. I did the exact same thing just then and it worked. I don't know what the deal is with that. It could just be a general Vim problem. It could be a problem with the plugin. I'm not entirely sure. But sometimes it might just go and run the regular binding without the local leader key. So just keep that in mind. Now, one thing you can also do along with this is if you go up to a heading and you add in square brackets and then you either put in a slash or a percent sign, wherever that is on my keyboard, what this is going to do is actually keep track of how much of the list you've actually completed. So right now it doesn't show anything, but let's go and do \cc, and as you can see, it now says I've done 0% of the list. So from this point on, as I actually go and update the list, it's going to update this number. So \cc, 50% done. If I go down to this one, \cc, 100% done. And obviously you can do this in any order. And if you add new list items, so let's add in this one and \cc. Now, as you can see, it went and updated to 66% because this time there is 3 items in the list rather than there only being 2 items. And if you want to actually go and create a new list item rather than just copying one, basically, if you just press enter on any of the lines that has a list on it, what it's going to do is continue that same sort of list. So in this case, it created a new list item that was plus with a checkbox on it. But if I go and create it from this point right here, what that's going to do is create a plain list using a dash. And if we do it from this point, it's going to do a plain list using a plus. So obviously we can have this percentage of the work that we've done of a checklist, but let's say there isn't an explicit checklist and we just want to say that something needs to be in the to-do state. Well, if we go and select a heading, what we can do is a local leader CT, and that adds the word to do to it. So that means this is in the to-do state. And if we do \CT again, or local leader CT, that will then cycle it to the done state, and then local leader CT again, and that will cycle it back to the regular state. So local leader CT will cycle you through the to-do states. Now, this percentage thing right here is supposed to work with to-do states as well, but I haven't noticed it actually working. So if I just go and add the percentage sign here, that should go and update this number right here. It should say you're at X percentage of the entire list, but it doesn't seem to be working right now. I don't know why that's not working. Once again, the documentation says this should be working, but there's a couple of things throughout the documentation that aren't entirely clear, and I'll get to that in just a moment. One such item is with global agendas. So a global agenda is basically going to look at a specific file or a specific folder and then take all of the dates and then stick it into a special buffer that says, okay, this is everything you need to do for this week, or this is all of the to-dos that you have set right now. But the global agenda doesn't work. So if I do \CAA, I have now frozen Vim. There's nothing I can do at this point. My Vim buffer is now frozen. I can leave this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It's still going to be frozen because it doesn't actually work. So let's actually go and... Actually, I can't quit out of this. So let's just go quit my terminal and open that again. So let's go back into test.org. And if I do the same thing for global to-dos, so \CAT, I don't know why it's frozen. If it couldn't find the file, it would say, hey, the file doesn't exist. So it's clearly looking for a file. And even though the file is there, it's just freezing. And it's not because the file is massive either. I have a single file there. So for whatever reason, this doesn't seem to be working and it will freeze Vim every single time. Don't know why it does that. It's just really annoying to deal with though. However, we don't have all hope lost. We can still do local to-dos. So if I go back into org mode and I do \CA capital T, as you can see, that will then show us all of the to-dos in our current file. And luckily, it also works for the weekly agenda as well. So if I do \CA capital A, as you can see, it shows all of the dates in the current week. Now, when I said the inactive dates didn't actually work, I didn't realize they actually worked in a local file. So if I just go and add one now, so \SI, and just add a date here. So this one here is inactive, this one is active. If I do \CA capital A, we need to make sure we save the file first. It doesn't go and save that when we try to open up that new buffer. So \CA capital A, as you can see, it only shows the active date, it doesn't show the inactive date. So this is by no means everything this plugin can do, but this is where we start to get into a bit of a weird situation. So let's have a look at the help page for org mode. So if I just go to that page and then I search for not yet implemented. Now, if you're doing documentation for anything, please don't write not yet implemented in any of your documentation because it's going to get really confusing. And in this, it's in the documentation 43 times. So there's a bunch of different bindings and a bunch of different features that are labeled with not yet implemented. So it's really hard to go and actually read this documentation and work out what this can actually do. So if you just go and cycle through this, you'll see things like tables are not yet implemented, footnotes are not yet implemented, internal links not yet implemented, handling links not yet implemented, and a bunch of other stuff as well, which are in the regular version of org mode, but for some reason they decided to include it in the documentation for Vim org mode, even though it doesn't actually work. Now, I don't know why anyone would want to do that, and if you're writing documentation for any application out there, please don't do that, or I will probably submit an issue about it, because that shouldn't be in your documentation. If it's not yet implemented, don't bother listing it, because if it's listed, it will confuse someone, and I spent way too much time not realizing that a lot of this stuff wasn't implemented yet, when if it just wasn't in the documentation, I wouldn't even be thinking about it. So I haven't used org mode myself, but I imagine it's going to be fairly similar to the experience of using, say, Vim emulation in Visual Studio Code. It's better than having nothing at all, but if you really want that proper experience, you're going to have to use Emacs to use org mode, and if you want to have those proper Vim key support, you're going to have to use Vim. If you want a good note-taking system inside of Vim, I would highly suggest using VimWiki. You don't have to go and use org mode just because you were using org mode inside of Emacs. If you want good note-taking in Vim, VimWiki is the way to go. But if you do want this feature subset and you want this weird documentation, I guess Vim org mode might be fine to use. As I said, I wouldn't really recommend this unless you're some really weird person who wants to use Vim as your text editor, but you still are really attached to using org mode. I imagine there are better ways to get this experience, like using the Vim keys through like Doom Emacs or something like that inside of Emacs. That's probably going to be better than whatever you're getting here. But if you do want to use this, then it is available for you to use. So I think that is pretty much everything for me. But before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Corbinian, Craig, Nathan, Andrew, Montazar, Joseph, Peter D. Rowe, Tony Donald, John, Mikkel, Spagin, Thais, and Zilva. If you want to go watch my podcast where it's just all rambling nonsense, that is available on the Tech Over Tea YouTube channel and library channel for the video version, and also anywhere you listen to audio podcasts for the audio version. Also remember to go check out this channel on Library, BitChute, and a bunch of other platforms as well. And if you want to support the channel without paying any extra money to me, then use my Amazon affiliate links, and I get a bit of kickback from just anything else, from just anything you purchase out there. So you could purchase, I don't know, some Twinings Australian afternoon tea, or you could purchase a phone, and I get a bit of a kickback for that. So I think that is pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.